I almost like to think of painting as I paint in hopes that this type of painting will become obsolete. I'm just pulling together things that are part of the visual canon of painting history and letting them kind of say what they actually did and not just, look how they appeared. And letting them reveal their own contradictions. These are all the deaths since 2000 at the border. And then these kind of piñata capital font text. Then you have St. Michael by Giordano, and then Caravaggio's Narcissus. Kind of looking at your own reflection or your own doing. It's really easy to kind of get caught up and to think that, oh, we just got to get rid of Trump because then migrants will be happy again, and minorities will be happy again. But the thing is, these institutions are bigger than these individuals. It's all interconnected, and that's why I'm trying to connect these things. Art complicates the world, I think. Art complicates things, and I think that's what I like, is because things are complicated. I was born in Costa Rica, but my mom is American. She was born in New York, but her dad's Colombian, and then my dad's Costa Rican, and then we lived in Venezuela, and then I moved to the US when I was 12, so there's never quite any like an isolated identity. We were talking about, the colonial oil paintings. These are more like how material can make things move, change, or reveal information, or talk about history in a way that is not so linear. This is made with wood stain, and I stained the whole thing until it was black, and then I rubbed the stain off, and then the title reappeared. And the title is the reinitiation of the struggle. And I think there's so much space for this kind of work, and it's really exciting. This is a portrait of somebody kind of elongated, a young man who was part of the labor organizer movement. You can only see the disappeared through mobilization. This is the first iteration of kind of an idea that played on mobilization and made people move. So you have to move to get, and there's never a point where you get all the information, But the more you move, you kind of compile that information. Border deaths and disappearances, is not like an isolated historical phenomenon. There's a history of disappearance in the border in Mexico, North Mexico, and South Arizona, just in this area. So you have this young man from the 60s who participated in, labor organizing, probably with the mines near the border, who was disappeared. And then you have a young man who maybe 5 years ago disappeared crossing the border for economic reasons. So you have history repeating itself in the same place, with the same, these are made from the earth, from the same place. They almost reflect each other, even in their pose and their gaze and in their absence. The mural on Speedway reminds me more of my practice in the studio. With this wall, I'm really thinking about the floor plans of a place, kind of like the blueprints of a place, not necessarily like a linear narrative, but I like to think of it as a visual essay of place. I'm a very messy painter. There's something really beautiful about the chaos of mixing on the wall itself and on the spot. How that can only exist in that moment that I mix it, and there's nothing else. The mess that I make, the 3 primary colors, and the end result, there's something really nice about how out of so little, everything else comes out.
I had heard about him a little bit through the grapevine, but just that there was an interesting new artist who already had a reputation as a muralist in New York and around the country. But I've been going to MFA shows at the University of Arizona since I first came in 1995. So I always loved to scout, to meet new artists. I'm usually very methodical about making any acquisitions and usually very tentative when it comes to actually purchasing a piece. And when I saw this piece, I acted extremely spontaneously for myself. I literally went up to the curator and said, put this on hold right now. I want to be sure we get this piece. It brought me to tears. There was something so moving about the piece. You are brought in by the beauty of the reproduction of the Caravaggio. But the fact that he was addressing an issue, the idea of the government silencing or manipulating issues of immigration to serve their own purposes. I mean, he's not afraid to take on topics head on. I think it's important to have his work here because it really fills a niche. No one's painting like him. No one's addressing these themes in the same way.
Just going out is the first step of researching, for real researching for your practice.
It's so important to actually travel to the places that you're doing work about. I work at an environmental science lab at the U of A, and we do environmental sampling, neighboring mines. Carlito is my partner and husband, and we met in the MFA program together. He's from New York, and I'm from the Midwest, Nebraska.
You gotta wave.
Oh yeah, you gotta wave.
Because you don't want to look like you
Don't belong here.
Yeah. Simple as a wave. It's so nice just to have a moment where you just go and just be in a place. There is that tension that you can see. And I see that with mines, and I see that with migration, and they're so closely tied in Arizona. They're the same locations. There's the same landscape of these open pit mines, exploited labor, and also enforcement on migration. The border, I begin to see it less as a place, but as like a method that is replicated as you just move around the entire world.
Art it's a way that you can visualize science and data. It's a way that people can develop this more embodied understanding.
And it's not necessarily about just like saving the world or fixing something, but it's just trying to better understand how things are actually a lot more interconnected. For my work, what it's really about is just about how we're more similar than we're different. Going out, you start to realize that we're all part of a shared history.